Hey guys, what's going on? It's Colin here again. Today I'm very excited. I finally got my hands on a hit and miss engine. For those of you guys that don't know what that is, I'm going to explain it later in this video, so stay tuned. But I've been wanting one of these for a very long time. The problem is they're really expensive. So I finally got my hands on one for a decent price, so I figured in this video we could try and get it running again. It's been quite a while, so I'm going to pop you guys off the tripod here, we'll take a look and I'll go over the story with it. Alright, so I got you guys off the tripod here. So basically, ever since I first saw one of these hit and miss engines, you know, I was looking at them when I was like 3 years old at engine shows that I used to go to with my grandpa. I was always fascinated by them. I never really knew much about them at the time, obviously. But then, as I got a little older, I'd say at least 5 years ago, I learned about them in a little more detail. And once I figured out how they worked and everything, I really wanted one. I kind of been searching around, you know, like a little bit here and there. Then I got into the small engines about 2 years ago. And then I started really picking it up. The problem with these engines is they're really expensive. And I mean really expensive, especially for a kid like me. So I was never able to really get my hands on one. Then I became friends with my buddy Brad, who's you guys may have seen a couple of videos of these on my channel already. Those are his engines. He said he was going to sell me one of them, not one that I videoed, but a different one. I said, okay, I'll keep that in mind. I was planning on going and buying it, and just because I just kept peeking around on Facebook Marketplace, and I saw this one. And the reason I kind of caught my eye was, well, there are two reasons. One, it was the only one on Long Island that I'd found and I was searching a pretty broad radius, and it was like one of like two on Long Island. And it happened to not be that far from me. It was only like 45 minutes away. And two, it was the only one that was like under $1,000. All the other ones I was looking at were 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, 1,200. Like, these things are really expensive. This one was listed at $475, which is still way more than I was looking to pay, but I figured, hey, it's already lower, so I'm just going to message the guy, tell him what the deal is, and see if he'll come down anymore. So sure enough, I messaged him. I said, hey, is it still available? He said yes. I said, would you come down any lower? I explained, you know, that I'm 17 and I'm just trying to get into them. And he said, call me. So I did. We talked. We went back and forth a little bit. He said, okay, let me get back to you. I was offering like 200 because that's really as much as I really want to spend right now. He came back later. He said 300. I said 250. He said 275. I said deal. So I went out and took a look at it, and everything's there except for the mag, which I knew was missing from the pictures and stuff. So this is a 2 horsepower. Let's see. Hopefully you guys can read this. It is a 2 horsepower Fuller & Johnson, model number NC, or I guess that's not a number, not a number, just a model. Model NC. I can't tell what that says in terms of RPM rating. I can't read it. The number here is 170212, and if I did my research correctly, that dates this engine back to 1928, which is pretty cool. It's got the solid wheels, which in 28 apparently they had an option. They previously were spoked, and then they had an option for solid wheels. And it's just kind of interesting. It's all there. Everything seems to be relatively original for the most part. The only thing that's missing is the magneto. That's part of the reason I was able to talk them down a bit, because those mags literally run like 200 bucks. So somebody's rigged up a car coil. I'll get into that in a second. But anyways, I went out there. And when I got there, nice guy, he was showing me some other stuff he has for sale. It's pretty cool. He's got an old Kohler generator, you know, 4-cylinder flathead, but I don't have the room or money for that. So, took a look at it. The cylinder's got a little bit of surface rust inside of it, because this feels a little stiff. It does turn over, and it has a stuck intake valve, but otherwise it was all good. Now you guys may be seeing these pieces on the floor and wondering why I haven't talked about them yet, especially seeing as though I said the engine was all complete and good. Well, he had this thing on a cart, because right now it's just on these wood skids, which I'm not sure if they're original or not. They look a little too new, but either way, I'm thinking these things are usually weigh a ton, so I'm thinking it's pretty solid on the cart, right? So I paid him, I'm rolling it out to my car, and I hit a bump in his driveway, and this thing just went kapoosh, right on its side, right on the, of course, the side where everything's delicate too. This side, the mixer side and everything. My heart just like skipped. Like it's the same. It's not a good feeling. It's such a heart-wrenching sound too. I mean, I dropped this engine. This is my Briggs & Stratton Model 9 that I made into a hit and miss. There's a very early video on my channel is about this. But I dropped this thing off a bench once. All I did was snap the spark plug, but God, does it makes your heart skip. That really scared the crap out of me. And I was kicking myself for that, even though I broke the spark plug. Well, we tipped it back on the cart. I took a look. It didn't look like anything was broken. And then we lifted it up into the car, and I noticed there was a piece still sitting on the cart. So I went and grabbed it. Turns out, this little piece, which goes here, snapped off when I dropped it. So that's completely my fault. But yeah, I kind of kicked myself for a day about that. But now I'm over it. I know that I have a friend who knows how to braze, so I think I'm gonna get that brazed back on. The reason I didn't notice it was because this piece was still hanging here with the oops, that's backwards. This was still hanging here by the little pin that goes in here. And that pin, it's not here because I accidentally dropped it in the water hopper, so I'm going to have to try and fish that out later. Yeah, I was a little pissed about that, but honestly, it's not a huge deal. This piece should not be very hard to braze back on the bottom there. That's a pretty hefty piece of metal there. But yeah, so that's the story with it. After that, it kind of sat over there with the engines for a couple days because I've been working like crazy. Been really busy. But figured in this video, I'm going to try my best to get this thing going. I don't think it will need a whole lot, but you know, those are famous last words. But yeah, that's the plan. Before I do that, though, I'm just going to give you guys a little overview. Now that I've given you all the backstory. So here it is. It's a 2-horse, as I mentioned. It's got some very interesting stuff. I think this thing was actually in use when like the magneto went bad, because if you look, this looks like, first of all, this is very old wire. Unless this thing's been restored in the past, this has got to be the original paint, and then that also means that this wire is really old. Now, it could have been restored at some point. It was if it was restored really well, and they put this on. But I'm thinking that this is original paint, and some farmer somewhere rigged this thing up. What he did was, I guess the magneto went bad or something. So they zip tied. That's not old. I bet somebody else did. I bet the previous owner did that. But this is the thing that would normally actuate the mag. Well, there's a limit switch. That's not a limit switch. A micro switch here that's kind of rigged up. There's 2 of them. There's one here and there's one that works off the crank over there. This is the one I'm going to try and use. But somebody kind of crudely made this up. You could see flathead screws into the wood there. That's another thing that makes me think it's kind of old. But this is a piece of aluminum, so I'm really not entirely sure. But basically, instead of a mag, we're using a car coil, and instead of points with that car coil, we're using this little micro switch, which grounds it out. So then that's around through this tube down here, and that comes out over here. This is also a very old car coil. It's probably a 6-volt coil. There's no good spot for that, and there's a couple of like alligator clips and stuff. But here's the other one. This doesn't really appear to be hooked up to, or I think this was set up that you could use either or. They're not hooked up together. And this is the one that was like more hooked up, and that's the one I'm going to use. Just because I think that's a little better than this setup. But somebody rigged this up. There you go. That trips the switch, or it's supposed to at least. I don't know if this switch is stuck. But, oh, maybe this switch went bad, so they rigged it up over there. I don't really know. But, yeah, it's, somebody also rigged up this thing. This actually looks really well made, so I don't think this was necessarily a farmer repair. But, this is a rope cup, and this is coming off because I don't want it. Not going to use that, but somebody really put some time into this. This looks like it was pretty well made. They took a piece of pipe and machined down 2 plates for the sides. They're screwed in with flat heads. There's 2 set screws in there. Very interesting, but I'm saving that, but it's not going to stay on here. Also, there's no pulley on this side. Usually they had one, but oh well. Somebody else. This is what you call a plumber's exhaust, if I've ever seen one. This is all, I think, copper, somebody rigged this up. It looks super ugly, so I'm going to probably take this off and just put a small muffler out the side here. Or maybe I'll straight pipe it, who knows. But yeah, this is rather interesting, to say the least. But yeah, if this is original, then these decals are in really good shape. I'll say that much. This oil looks nice and old. I'm going to call that original. Does turn on, and I haven't tried it because I don't have any oil currently. I need to go get some. Sorry, I just had a really loud plane go by, so I don't think you guys could hear what I was just saying, so I'm going to re-record it here. All these grease cups look original. This one looks like it's been a bit chewed up by somebody putting a wrench on it or something. All the bearings are tight too. There's virtually no slop, especially considering it's almost 100 years old. In the these bearings, you know, the flywheel, the crankshaft bearings, and the connecting rod bearing. This gear here has a tiny bit of play, but it's nothing I'm going to worry about. The latch out on this thing is kind of interesting. There's just a single weight right here. When you pull that, it makes this lobe come forward, which lifts up the latch finger, which is over here. It's kind of interesting. But I love these engines because everything's on the side and exposed, and everything moves and stuff like that. Here's your cam. Just big old straight cut gears and stuff. The mixer is here. This still turns freely. Thank God that this didn't break. I'm very, very lucky that that didn't break. Also, the bracket for the magneto is here, which is good, so I can just get a mag and I don't have to worry about getting a bracket. But the push rod actually goes through the mixer, which is kind of interesting. There's a choke plate here. This gas tank looks really strange. But I was talking to my friend, and he said that this is original. It's just really strange. It kind of comes up in between the push rod and the mixer there, like that. It's just really strange looking. Looks like somebody's been doing some work to it, and somebody put a stupid rubber line on here, so that's probably going to get removed. Also, apparently it's supposed to screw into the bottom here, so I guess this... I guess it is original, unless somebody drilled and tapped holes in the side, because there is 2 holes there and 2 holes over here. Well, this one looks like there's bolts broken off inside of them, so that's another thing for the list. I don't think this wood is quite old enough to be original, but it is nice to have these skids. I'm going to at some point build a nice cart for it, but I might keep these skids, and I might just have them like with a U-bolt bolted down to the cart. I'm really not sure yet, but it's a bit of an interesting engine. There's no real like base or sump or anything. A lot of these have a big base where the gas tank's inside. This one doesn't. It's almost like 2 halves, because it's just these 2 pieces. They're only joined for the cylinder here. But alright, I think I've been babbling on for far too long, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start tearing this thing down. I'm going to probably pull the piston, connecting rod, probably the head too. And I'm going to just try and get access to the cylinder so I can take a look in there. I'm probably going to have to run a hone over it to clean it up. And we're going to unstick this valve. This one works. This one... Oh. It's free now. It was really stuck. I was spraying stuff on it yesterday, so... Huh. I guess we don't have to worry about a stuck valve now. They both work. A little bit of play in them, but again, it's almost 100 years old, and these probably weren't oiled religiously as they should be. But, oh, now I have to debate whether I want to pull the head or not. And the plug's loose. The guy claimed that he had this running about 5 years ago. I'm going to add about 10 years to that and make it 15. Just because of the way it looks. But who knows, maybe it was 5 years ago, I don't know. But it definitely seems like longer. It's a really long tube down into the cylinder there. But it's a cool old plug, so that's staying definitely. But I think for this one I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse. I think that's just going to work better. But alright, so I guess I'm going to start tearing things down. I think I'm going to pull the head just so I can lap the valves into while I'm in there. But, alright. Well, it sounds like a plan to me. I'm going to go ahead and throw you guys up on the tripod and start the time lapse. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get this thing up on a bench, so you guys are going to have to deal with some weird camera angles as I sit on the floor and work on this. But, anyways, let's start tearing her down. Alright guys, so I'm just going to take a quick break from the time-lapse here while I have this thing still apart, just to point out a couple interesting things. The first thing I noticed when I first took this gas tank out is there's still liquid in there, so I'm a little scared to see if that's even still gasoline or not. But yeah, I was expecting a lot worse, to be completely honest. This is going to look worse on camera than it is in person, but there is some pitting and a couple of what I'll call craters like this. What happened was, due to this stupid plumber's exhaust pipe system, which valve is it? It's this one. You can see in there maybe, there's rust. Water got into the exhaust valve and got into the cylinder a bit, and that sat there for a while. You can see where the piston clearly was. Hang on. Piston was obviously right here. That's why the back is so clean. The back cleaned up real nice. This front is got some pitting and a crater or two like that, which that's pretty bad. But this stuff here smoothed out pretty good. And keep in mind, this piston only comes up to here in the stroke, so it's only like 2 inches that it has to deal with. So even if that kills my compression a little bit, I mean, this engine isn't working much. It's just going to be running at shows. So as long as it runs alright, then it's going to be fine. But yeah, that was kind of a little bit disappointing to see, but I was expecting worse. The only other thing, and this really isn't a big deal at all, is this cracked ear here on the mixer. But I'm going to go ahead and just throw a washer on that bolt and we'll probably be fine. But yeah, the piston in this thing is massive. I expected it to be, but still seeing it in person is like, wow. Whoops, there goes the gas tank. It's got to be 4 inches long, and I measured the top. It's about 3 5/8, not 5/8. Yeah, no, I was right, 5/8. It's about 3 5/8 in diameter, and this thing's got some heft to it, oh my god. But it's very interesting. You can see on the end of the connecting rod there's like a little cup. What happens is that drip oiler is the only oil in this whole engine, so that drips down, and there's a little hole up in the top of the cylinder there that you can probably see. And as the piston goes back and forth, that A, lubricates the piston and bore, but also there's a hole in this piston, and that oil drops through, lands in the cup on the connecting rod, which lubricates the wrist pin. It's just super simple. Valves were in pretty good shape. They're a little pitted on the top, but that doesn't matter. So I lapped them in. Now they're sealing really good. I'm surprised to see that the grease in this really doesn't appear to be too terrible. Bearings are in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and pop those 2 bearings off over there and just double check, but I popped one of the grease cups in between shooting the time lapse, and the grease really doesn't look that terrible, so that's good to see. But yeah, it's coming along. Got a bunch of little tiny pieces here. If it weren't for the fact that I need that piece brazed, I would probably have this thing running by the end of the day, but what are you gonna do? So I'll probably slap it back together at some point soon. Of course, the landscapers are starting right as I record, as always. So I'm gonna throw you guys back on the tripod, and we're gonna continue the time lapse, this time with reassembly. Alright guys, so I've gotten about as much work done for today as I think I'm going to. I just went ahead and threw the mixer back on there just to double check that everything here was moving alright. Compression's okay. I think it's a tad low even for these things, but that would make sense with the size of those pits. What I am curious to see is what this liquid is. I don't know if it's gas, but I haven't even looked at this tank yet, so it smells like gas a bit, but not terrible, so let's see. Looks like iced tea. I grabbed the right container for the job. Alright, I'm gonna say that's pretty old gas, and you guys can't even see it. Hang on a second. Yeah. So that's pretty old gas there. Now that it's out here, I can definitely smell it. It's got some water in it too, so probably a good thing we drained that. I really did grab the right container here. Look, looks just like iced tea. But alright, well, that's good to know. That should be nice and dry now. So, you know, I think I might do a couple other little things today. I might mess around with the ignition timing a bit. I might also mess around with this gas tank, but we'll have to see. But either way, let's continue our time lapse here. So guys, unfortunately, I don't usually do this, but I think I'm going to do it on this one. I think this is going to be at least a two-part series. Because right now, as you can probably tell, the head's off it, and that's because I'm having my friend weld the piece that I broke back on for me. But I have no idea how long that's going to take. And I figured rather than keeping it from all you guys, I would, you know, just post a video of what I've done so far. And then in part 2, we can hopefully be reassembling, you know, with the fixed head and doing a test fire, working out the fuel system and the ignition system and stuff like that. But I figured this is probably enough content to make one part, and I also, like I said, I don't want to keep this from you guys for who knows how long. So anyways, I'm going to call this the end of part 1. Looking a little sad right now, but hopefully it will run. I have a good feeling about it, despite those despite the pitting and what I'm going to call those craters in the cylinder. Even if it doesn't run, I have a couple ideas of how I'm going to make it run. Those will certainly be interesting. But like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier, this thing isn't supplying my water or anything like that. It's just going to be a show engine. So all it needs to do is sit there and, you know, as long as it runs and it's not like double or triple sucking, and then I'd be fine with it. And it does seem to have some compression, even though, you know, despite the pitting, because if I spin the wheels over, it bounces back off the compression a little bit, which apparently is a good thing. But I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait till part 2 to see. So, like I said, I have no idea when part 2 is going to happen, but just keep your eye out for it. So anyways, guys, like I said, I have no idea when part 2 is going to happen. It's gonna happen when I get the head back and I have free time to work on this thing. But I guess, you know, I don't really know when that will be. So sorry, but I figured at least one part's better than nothing. So anyways, thank you all for watching. If you like what you see, hit the little like and subscribe buttons. I'd appreciate that. We're almost to 150 already. That would be cool. If you're not subscribed, you can go ahead and join the 15% of you who actually are watching and subscribed, and leave the 85% who are watching but aren't subscribed. I would appreciate that. I'd also appreciate it if you have a comment, if you could leave it below, because it is fun to interact with people down there. I always like to see what people have to think about the projects and stuff, you know, and just, you know, talk with people who are also interested in the same stuff as me. It's always interesting. But anyways, till the next one, I'll see you then. Bye.